hope you enjoy the show today. And we have some bumblebees in the house. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a live stream show today. We're going to talk about the early days of Speedway before the Costa Mesa Speedway. So we're going to talk about that one right now. And I hope you enjoy your time today in the Hive. Just remember that this is a live stream show and we have no time limit. So please stay with us as long as you can. I know that the attention span is only like small, but we're going to try to entertain you with a lot of cool stuff. So please stay with us as long as humanly possible. And we're going to talk about some early days Speedway today. So it's going to be pretty cool. And we had lots of Speedway before Costa Mesa. Lots and lots of Speedway before the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds. And we're going to go ahead right now and we're going to talk about it. So we have on August 7th, 1932. Do you remember that year? I don't. It was before my time. And we had the earliest TT Speedway races, and that was held at the Santa Barbara racetrack. It was a municipal track over there. And we had a young 16-year-old, 15-year-old Cordy Milne that raced that track. He raced the TTs. It was like the Harley Davidsons and the Indians. And Cordy was one of the first racers to race. He was a young kid. And he did really well. It was a flat track. And also they had Sprouts Elder. He's a rider from England, the UK. He was a very famous early day rider. We're going to talk more about Sprouts Elder. We have to because he was a famous rider in the early days of Speedway, American Speedway. And Sprouts Elder was really good. And also we had this guy named Shorty Campbell. Shorty Campbell. He must have been tall. No, he was short. He was a little guy. Good for riding motorcycles. Little guys do good. Tall guys like me, not so good. But no, actually the small guys, yeah, it's good. So Shorty was there. They had 3 riders at the Santa Barbara Raceway racing on the 100-yard line. Yeah, I'm a 100-yard line rider. Woo! But they had one rider riding on the 120-yard line. 120-yard line. Yeah, I ride the 120-yard line, no problem. My name is Sweet Lou Wilson of Santa Barbara, California. Hometown boy, Sweet Lou. I like that name. Sweet Lou. That's a cool name. So Sweet Lou was a track champion type of guy at a 120-yard line handicap. And Cordy was just a young rider, probably just starting at the time. But he was probably winning because he was a low yardage rider. And Cordy went ahead and was working at the Western Union as a delivery boy. Have you worked at the Western Union as a delivery boy? I think it's all done by internet today. But Cordy was a messenger boy, a delivery boy, and I bet he was fast as lightning, fast as the internet. Well, maybe not that fast, but Cordy was fast, and he was a good worker. He was a young boy, saving his money, buying motorcycles, supporting his racing habit. I like that guy, Cordy Milne, number 7. And while he was working, he was just a young boy, like I said, 15, 16 years old. And he had a co-worker who ended up being one of his partners in crime, Lammy Lamoureux. And he was a young boy also, like 16 or 15 years old, or maybe 14. I think maybe he was even younger than that. And Lammy turned out to be a famous rider. We'll talk about Lammy in a minute. But his brother, Jack, his older brother by 7 years, Jack Milne, was a little bit older than Cordy. And Jack saw that Cordy was making some money and winning racing TT Flat Track Speedway, early days in Santa Barbara. And Jack is like, yeah, I like this. I think I'm going to go ahead and ride motorcycles. Why? Because Jack is a businessman, and Jack thinks with his brain, and Jack knows there's money to be made. And if there's money to be made, you'll see Jack Milne. He's a very genius business guy. So Jack went ahead and started riding Speedway because of his younger little brother, Cordy, was cleaning up and making money. And Lammy Lamrock, we'll call him Lammy. Lammy went ahead and saw all the money and stuff, and he says, I like that. So I'm going to quit my job as a delivery boy, and I want to race Speedway. So all these guys start riding together about the same time. And June 7th, 1933 was the first Speedway race that I know of. It was at the San Diego Naval Yard in San Diego, California. I raced there years ago, but not at the Naval Yard. It was a long time later. And these guys were hot. They were really good. They were riding those JAPs, and they were cleaning up. That was June 7th, 1933 in San Diego. And it was sponsored by the San Diego Speedway Racers Association. They raced over by the Navy shipyard where they build those ships in San Diego, California. This was the first known speedway track that I know of. There might be more, so don't quote me, but this is the first speedway track that I know. It's June 7th, 1933. And Cordy, Jack, and Lammy were all racing and doing really well. And the three stars were from Pasadena. They were stars at the beginning. These guys were hot, you know, they were good. They weren't just like very bad. They were just rose to the top. The cream rises to the top, and that was the cream. Cordy, Jack, and Lammy. Those guys are awesome. And other riders that rode at the San Diego, we can't just talk about them. There's other riders too, you know. Let's see, Jimmy Gibbs, Bo Lisman, Shorty Campbell. We talked about Shorty, that little guy. He was racing. You stay up in Santa Barbara, Shorty. Don't come down to San Diego. He was down San Diego, and he was doing well. And the last guy was Bob Killer. Bob Killer. I like Bob's name. Brian Killer. I like that name. Can you imagine that's a good speedway name if you have a name like Killer. Like, I'm the killer. I think people are scared. I think you're going to win every race if you name yourself the Killer. Anyway, I don't know. That's not me. Okay. So, anyway, so we have the top four riders were Cordy, Jack, Lammy, and Sprouts Elder. Sprouts Elder was a badass mofo. He was good. And Sprouts Elder, he set a whole bunch of track records. Of course, Lammy, and Jack, and Cordy were all kind of young riders, and they weren't. But Sprouts Elder was the senior, and he was good. He set the track record, such as the one lap in 17 seconds. It must have been a small track to go around in 17 seconds. And the 2-lap in 34 seconds. And the 4-lap main event, I bet Sprouts won a couple main events there. He said that was 72 seconds for 4 laps. So they did a lot of like lap times and scorekeepers and timekeepers back in the early days. I don't know why. Why did they do that? But they do that sometimes in England too. They do like timing. They do a lot of timing of the laps and stuff. But you know, in Costa Mesa, Paris, and everything, who cares? We don't care about that no more. But in the old days, it was like really famous and popular. And everybody was trying to beat each other out. So I guess it was like holding the carrot before the rabbit, you know, like faster, faster, do it again, faster. So that's why they did the scorekeeping of the time, so they could go faster and hopefully not hurt themselves. So that was it, and that's how they did it back in the old days. They did the time and the timekeepers. So in 1934 and 1935, they continued to race speedway all over the United States, and 34 and 35 was And he won back-to-back U.S. Speedway championships. Cordy Milne was probably the first United States Speedway champion. And he was a Speedway star. I'm sure you had Lammy and Jack, old brother Jack, racing. And who won that race? Cordy Milne. Cordy was a good rider. So, and also Cordy has a daughter named Sandra Hicks. Do you know Sandra Hicks? I know her. Hi, Sandra. Hopefully she's watching. Sandra is an amazing lady. She works at the Costa Mesa Speedway. She just does all the scorekeeping, and she helps me win a couple races. No, I'm just joking. She doesn't help me win. But Sandra is the daughter of Cordy Milne, and we don't talk about that very much, so that's pretty cool. And Sandra has like all the Speedway bikes from Cordy and Jack. They have all the antiques, all that history is all held by the Hicks family, Gary Hicks Sr. and Sandra. It's really cool. So if you want to learn more about the early day Speedway, don't talk to me, talk to Sandra and Gary Hicks. They know everything, and they got some nice old vintage motorcycles passed down from Jack and Cordy, so it's pretty cool. So enough of that. So these guys were really good, Jack, Cordy, Lammy, and they were recruited by the British promoters. The British promoters were back then in 1934, 35, they're watching the Speedway riders and they're like, oh, I like that guy, oh, I like that guy. Just like today, we have that race coming up in a couple of days on the 12th of December, this Saturday night at the Paris Speedway. And we're going to have a new crop of young riders coming up. And those guys over the pond, they're watching you. So just a little hint, if you want to like advance your career a little bit, do good and get higher on the podium, you know, get higher on the plate. Because why? Because the cream rises at the bottom? Nah. The cream rises at the top. So if you're at the top, those people over there at the pond will be looking at you. So that's what happened to Jack and Cordy. And Jack was recruited by the New Cross Tammers. The New Cross. Do you know the New Cross Tammers? I don't know them. They're not there no more. So, but Jack rode for them, and Cordy rode for the Hackney Wolves. The Hackney Wolves. I was at Hackney before, but it was after his time. And it's pretty a cool track, a long, crazy track there. And Lammy, he was there about a year later. He actually was probably at home trying to save his coins to go over to the pond. Probably took like a slow boat over there, you know, like take about 4 weeks to get there. I don't know, but anyways, he went ahead and raced for the Wimbledon Dons the following year. And I think Brad Oxley raced for the Wimbledon Dons. I'm not sure, but I think he did. And the Wimbledon Dons was a famous team. And Lemmy went ahead and raced a few years there. And then after the war, he went back and raced 2 more years. At like 1947 and 1948, he raced back in the British League. So all these guys were racing in the British League, and that was really cool. But before that, and going just a little bit before that, there's Speedway all over America. Like, for example, in 1934, they had Chicago, Illinois, they had a place called Logan Park Speedway, and they had all these local Chicago Speedway riders. They were racing Speedway in Chicago. And I bet it wasn't in the winter when it was snowing. It was probably a summer activity, maybe fairgrounds or something like that. But they had some good riders, local riders. They came from like Chicago, California, but I didn't see Cordy and Jack and Lamb there, but there was other riders from all over the United States. And Canada. Canada's in the house. And Canada, and let's say these guys, we're gonna talk about, they're 50-yard line riders, so they're all local riders and pretty good. Let's see, we also have Andy Coleslaw, Bob Miner, Bill Castleman, Ed Thornton, And so that was the list, and they had Speedway at different venues across the United States. So in 1934 and 1935, like I mentioned, Cordy won the back-to-back United States Speedway Championship. And also Cordy won the 2 times more, actually 1 time more, the back-to-back United States Championship in 1947 and 1948. Back-to-back Speedway champion, Cordy Milne. He won 4 Speedway championships, 2 back-to-back. That's a pretty good rider. I didn't know that. I didn't know Cordy won a United States Championship. And he won 4. Cordy was the leading championship getter in the early days. Cordy Milne, number 7 and number 1. Cordy was an amazing. Congratulations, Sandra. Your dad was a pretty good rider. I think so. And so anyways, and also Cordy was on the podium in 1937 with who? With his brother and with Lammy. So you had these 3 riders from Pasadena, California. The little old lady from Pasadena. Bong, 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 bong. No, not that one. No, you had these riders from Pasadena, not that little old lady. You had these young studs from Pasadena. You had Jack Milne as number 1, the world champion in 1937. And number 2, you had Lammy Lamoureux. And number 2, with a silver medal, you had Lammy sitting there from Pasadena, California. And number 3 from Pasadena, California, USA, you had Cordy Milne, number 7. I mean, now let me just talk about this. When is the last time you're going to see 3 guys on the World Championship podium anywhere from the same city and all American riders all together? That's amazing. You probably will never see that one ever again. Of course, they started Speedway in 1936, and 1937, I believe, was the second year they held World Championships. So these guys were the winners in the second year. The whole podium was Pasadena, California, United States Speedway riders. I like that one. You guys, you riders coming up, you should think about that one. Get together and all go over to Europe, win those races on the 12th, this Saturday, and go over there and get on that world podium. Not a bad idea. So anyways, that's exactly what happened. And in 1937, oh, I already talked about that one. And Lammy, he went ahead and was in 3 world championships. He placed 2nd place in 1937, and he placed again another time 3rd place on the world stage, and he placed 5th place on the world stage. So Lammy was 3 times on the World Championship top 5. Not a bad rider, Lammy Lamoureux. And he was inspired by Cordy in the little Western Union and delivering the messages. So I think he did pretty well for himself. That was really cool. So, so next we have the war. These guys, you know, we have the pandemic in 2020, and they had the war. They had World War II break out, and that really screwed their time up. It made them really, go bad. But Jack was smart. Jack Milne, like I mentioned before, was a businessman. And Jack saved his coins. So he went ahead and brought home the coins with Cordy and Lammy. They all left. They all said, we're out of here. We're not going to go ahead and be here with the war. We're out of here. So they went ahead and they, I'm going to adjust my hat. Ooh, it's hot in here. I'm going to move my hat another way here. And so they went ahead and came home, and they went ahead and Jack brought $4,000 worth of earnings. Now, Jack was famous, and Cordy, Lammy was pretty famous too. And they were in all kinds of publicity for cigarettes, don't smoke cigarettes, and all kinds of things. And they were making all kinds of money and saving the money too. So they were like celebrities, especially after they won the podium spot. All 3 of those guys were like super mega stars, and they made a lot of money. So they went ahead, Jack brought $4,000, the $4,000. Now, it doesn't sound like that much today, but back in 1930s, that was like $1 million. I mean, they brought home like $1 million. So that was pretty cool. And Jack and Cordy, they went ahead and started a motorcycle shop in Pasadena, California. I was there years ago at the motorcycle shop with Jerry Fairchild. He took me there and said, "This is the Milne Motorcycle Shop." And I saw an old sign there. It said like Milne Brothers and stuff. It was like an old motorcycle shop when I was there, because I wasn't there like in the 30s. I'm not that old, but it was really cool. I was in the Milne Motorcycle Shop. There was a Speedway bikes and motorcycles. It was like awesome. So if you missed the Milne Motorcycle Shop, you really missed a lot. So that was cool. And Jack and Cordy, they went ahead and started a car dealership, also in probably Pasadena, Los Angeles area. And they became very successful at selling cars and motorcycles, and they did really well. Why? Because they saved their money. So if you guys win this Saturday, you go to England and you start making some money, save your coins, because you never know when you need them. And that's what Jack did. And he invested and became very rich as a result. Smart people in those early days, the Milne brothers. So that's exactly what happened. The Santa Monica Speedway, they went ahead, I was going to say, Lammy went ahead and promoted Speedway during the war. So I guess Cordy and Jack and all these Sprouse Elder, these guys, they were all racing Lammy Speedway tracks. So Lammy became the early day promoter of Speedway during the war. Like, forget the war, let's ride Speedway. And that's what we're doing today. Forget the pandemic, let's ride Speedway. So we're doing like the same things that they did in the early days. We're not going to stop riding Speedway for anything. And Lammy was an early day promoter during the World War II. When everything stopped, Speedway kept going. Remember that, Steve Evans? Oh, he remembered that. So we're doing Speedway Saturday night. And this is the last race of the year. But Steve Evans didn't let the pandemic stop him. It says, let's ride Speedway, everybody. And we rode Speedway this year, so it's pretty cool. But in 1947, the war kind of screwed everything up for the guys in England. They never really went back, as far as I know, except for Lammy went back for 2 years, and he raced in the British League. But other than that, not so much. And so in 1947 and 1940, around 47, 48, they had Speedway at the Santa Monica Municipal Stadium near the pier at Santa Monica. The beautiful Santa Monica Pier. Have you been to that pier? It's pretty cool. I like that. Santa Monica Pier. It's beautiful. And they had Speedway back there. And they had Cordy. Milne was still racing back then. I think, he won the United States Championship. Of course he was racing. And also the number one point getter. The number one point getter that year was who? Jack Milne with 127 points. And Lammy was promoting that thing, and then he got 103 points for number 3 best rider in points in that year. So he was promoting and he was pocketing the money. So that was a very smart guy, It's another businessman. They're all like smart together, the Milnes and Lammy. They all know how to think pretty good. So they were doing that. And also other riders was number 6 in points was Pee Wee Cullum. I kind of heard his name before. Pee Wee Cullum. You don't hear his name very much, but he was a famous early day rider. Pee Wee. I bet he was tall. No, he was small. Pee Wee. Like Shorty, he was small. So Pee Wee and Shorty. How about Too Tall, Odom? No, he wasn't racing. Too Tall. How about Shorty and Pee Wee? Yeah, they're racing. Okay. So we have, let's see, who else was racing back there? With 53 points and 8th place, we had a new rider throwing into the early day speedway scene. And that was the famous Ernie Rocio. Do you know Ernie Rocio? I did a blog on Ernie Rocio and Jack Milne. And I didn't do Lammy or Cordy, maybe coming up, but I did a blog on Ernie Rocio, and Ernie Rocio was a young writer sponsored by Jerry Fairchild. And Ernie was just an amazing talent, but he was a young writer, and that's why he was like number 8 in points. And he went ahead and progressed really fast and became a famous United States Speedway rider, which you probably don't hear about that anywhere but right here. I'm going to teach you some early days Speedway history right now. And Ernie was very good, and he just progressed. He became the team captain in the 1951 United States Speedway team. They had about 8 or 9 riders, and Ernie Rocio was the team captain. And Ernie Rocio went to the World Finals, the 1951 World Finals. But Ernie was a young rider, and he was injured. He had a terrible crash, and I think it was his leg. He couldn't walk very good, and I think his body was injured. So he finished a disappointing 14th place in the 1951 World Championship. But that was because he was injured, not because he was a bad rider. So Ernie Rocio was the first rider since Jack Milne, Courtney, and Lammy back in the 30s. He was the first rider to make the World Championship in about 20 years. That was 1951. And in 1952, Ernie was expected to be on the podium. Ernie was really good. I saw pictures of Ernie with the great Ronnie Moore, they're hugging each other hey, buddy. And Ronnie Moore was very famous from New Zealand. Ronnie Moore. He was one of the greatest early day speed riders ever, the top 5 ever, the most natural speedway rider ever, Ronnie Moore. You want to look that guy up. He was amazing, Ronnie Moore. And so Ernie was friends with Ronnie Moore, and they were just hanging out a lot. And Ernie was expected, like I say, to make the podium in 1952. But tragedy struck Ernie, and it was very sad. He was racing a speedway. It was I think at West Ham or something, and it was a team racing. Ernie was a team captain, doing really well, and he was in first place. It was a very serious race to decide the team who's going to win that night. So there was a tie score, team racing. Ernie was in first or second place, and the mud got in his face, and he couldn't see, and it was screwed Ernie up. So he kind of released the gas, the throttle, and wiped his screen off of the mud off of his goggles. And his teammate from behind did not see Ernie do that, and didn't see him slow down either. And so this teammate ran up Ernie's back wheel and hit him really hard, and Ernie crashed very heavily, and he died instantly. So we're very sorry about that. Ernie Rocio, rest in peace, Ernie. Rest in peace. And we all love Ernie Rocio. And Ernie Rocio was a gentleman, beloved by all. He was a good guy. And so he died. Can you imagine being his teammate? You killed the team captain, the great United States Speedway star. You accidentally ran him over and killed him. So Ernie Rocio, rest in peace. And I happen to be friends with Ernie had a brother named Johnny. All these brothers riding, the Milne brothers, the Rocio brothers came next after the Milne brothers a few years later, back in the 40s and 50s. And the Rocio brothers was the next big brother team. It was Johnny Rocio and Ernie Rocio. They were really good. And Johnny was my father. On one of my blogs, I talk about that. And I used to go over to the Rocio house, Johnny's house, hang out all the time when I was a teenager. And we used to just enjoy all the parties at the Speedway. Barry Briggs, Ivan Major, and all the Speedway greats of the early days went to where? The Rocio family's house. Johnny was Ernie's brother, and Johnny was like my dad. Johnny had a son, and he named him Ernie, like his brother. And Ernie and I became best friends. And when I was young and developing as a speedway rider, Ernie Rocio was always by my side and helping me. And if I had a problem, Ernie Rocio was my bodyguard. And I had a couple of problems at Costa Mesa. And my guys were behind me because I'm not like a guy that likes trouble, you know. So I had my team behind me, the Rocios, the Italian Rocios. Don't mess with Italian mafia guys. You'll get your butt killed. And Ernie had a brother named Johnny, and they came to my rescue a couple of times, and they kicked some Bumholio people messing with the bumblebee. So I had my team around me, and there was the Rocios. So thank you so much for that, Rocios. And so anyway, so that was some of the early day riders. They were all on the 80-yard line. You had Jack, you had Cordy, and Lammy at the 80-yard line when they raced over at Santa Monica, and you had young Ernie Rocio at the 30-yard line. So you had these established stars of the British League all on the 80, and then you had the young up-and-coming rider on the 30. And those were about the years that Jerry Fairchild, he invented the first lay-down speedway bike. And Ernie Rocio rode that. I don't know how he did. I rode that bike, and I rode it like terrible. So it was an old JAP. I rode that bike that Ernie was built for Ernie. It was the first lay-down speedway bike. It was pretty cool, but it wasn't set up for the Bumblebee, so we won't talk about it. It's another story. But Ernie rode the first lay-down before Jawa, before GM, before everything. Jerry Fairchild invented the first lay-down speedway bike, and it worked. I told Jerry, I think you're crazy. This bike will never work. And it worked. Look at today. All the bikes are what? A lay-down speedway bike. So I think I was not very smart when I was a young whippersnapper. And I told Jerry he's crazy. And I think I was crazy. So that was that. So anyways, getting back to the Santa Monica Speedway. We got sidetracked, sorry. Lammy set 2 speed records, 1 lap for 13 seconds. It must have been the size of Costa Mesa, small track. And the 4 lap in 58 seconds. They did the time still back in 47. They're doing that time. Remember we talked about that? And so they're doing that. Jack Mills set the match race championship record. He must have won that race. He set it in 29 seconds. 2 laps, 29 seconds. Jack Milne, king of the hill. So Jack Milne set the record for the 2-lap match race champion. Okay, so that was pretty much it for the early day Speedway in 1947. And then, of course, we talked about Ernie Rocio in 51 and 52. And then Speedway kind of died off until like into the 60s. And we had the next Speedway on the World Championship stage from Ernie Rocio in 1951. He would have been 52, but it didn't work out good for him. In 1951, and then 1974, we had the great Scott Autry that raced in the World Championship. So we had the Milne brothers, Lammy, and then we had Ernie Rocio, and then we had Scott Autry. Was the first American rider in like 20-some years to make the World Championship stage. And then we had, congratulations, Scott Autry is a friend of mine on Facebook, and he's a cool dude. If you want a good friend, you go see Scott Autry. Very cool, and an amazing speedway rider. We love Scott Autry. Very good rider. So, 22 years later, the revival of Speedway again came, and it was not at the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds. They had kind of a dormant time for the 22 years. I'm not sure if they raced at all. If they did, it was very little. And we have a whole new crop of Speedway riders. Like today, coming up at Paris in a couple days, a whole new crop of riders. It kind of works that way, right? The older riders go out and then the new crop comes in. So anyways, they had a whole new crop of riders in the late 60s. And it was like Sonny Nutter, sliding. Sonny Nutter was the new bats, the new kids on the block. It was Sonny Nutter, Steve Bass, Rick Woods, the Rocket. We had Bruce Hazeroff, Sammy Tanner, Number 7, Sammy. He's a friend of mine on Facebook. He's still kicking and doing good, selling those Arai helmets. He's an amazing guy, amazing rider, set records riding through it. Sammy Kenner. Awesome dude. Okay, and we had Sweet Savage. Sweet Savage is a rider that we don't hear about, and he set records also. And Sweet was an amazing rider. So that's Sweet Savage. They had a 1-lap track record at the, it was at the Trojan Speedway, and it was set by Sammy Tanner. He set that in 13 seconds. Sammy Tanner, I told you he was good. He set the track record back. They still kept time in the late 60s. They don't do that anymore, but back in the late 60s, they kept time. So that was pretty cool. And Sammy Tanner set the track record at that time. And Sweet Savage was number 1 at points at the Trojan Speedway. The Trojan Speedway was over at Firestone Boulevard at the Long Beach Freeway. It kind of reminds me of that commercial, the car dealership, Southgate, something like that. I forgot. It's been a long time since I heard that commercial. But and they did it at Southgate, at the Southgate Speedway. There's also known, Trojan Speedway was known as the Southgate Speedway. It was in Los Angeles area at the Southgate, at the Firestone Boulevard, at the Long Beach Freeway. I don't remember any of that stuff, but it was before my time, so how would I remember that? So that's exactly what happened. Swede and Sammy did really well, and that track rode for 3 years, from 1968 to 1971. But another track in 1968 opened, and it was called the Whiteman Stadium. Do you know the Whiteman Stadium? It was in Pacoima, California. Who knows where Pacoima is? I have no idea. I was born and raised in California. I do not know Pacoima, California. I don't know that one. But Dude Criswell was the promoter, and they credit Dude Criswell as bringing back Speedway to America from the early days. So Dude Criswell was the original guy who bringing back the Speedway, and it was like at a little airport hangar in Pacoima, like it was a small engine airplane, was just a small aircraft flying in, and they had like a midget quarter-mile track around, let's say, a football stadium for cars, the midget cars. And then dude was like, let's see, what can we do here? So they went ahead and they made a small quarter-mile or eighth of a mile speedway track, like Costa Mesa Speedway size, inside the car racing track. And they had Speedway there. They had Speedway in that venue. But the problem is that the spectators had to sit really far, and they had to almost have binoculars to watch the Speedway race. And people don't like that. They want to be up close and personal to the Speedway. Have dirt flying in their faces, mud in their beard, coke. They like that action, the smell of the fuel and everything. Watching guys wipe out clothes, because some people, they need glasses and stuff. So sitting far away from the track was kind of bad for a lot of these guys. And that was maybe the downfall of the Whiteman Stadium. Plus, it was in Pacoima, California. So that was kind of weird. But the dude did bring back the Speedway in 1968. And Dude Criswell is credited as the pioneer of bringing back Speedway to the United States of America. So we had riders at the Whiteman Stadium. Let me read those riders. We had, dude was a rider. The dude was a rider. He rode. So I think he was trying to collect the money so he could promote the thing. All these guys promote and collect the money. Very good. Good businessman. And we had Don Hawley. We had Sammy Tanner, Stu Morley. I raised his son. And Sonny Nutter, sliding Sonny Nutter. He was everywhere. And with Rick Woods, he was everywhere. And we had Bruce Hazarock. And we had Uncle Harlan. Uncle Harlan. I didn't know Uncle Harlan raced at the Whiteman Stadium. That was pretty cool. So I bet that's what inspired the younger Bass brothers. Steve and Mike Bass. They probably went and watched they actually did go watch Uncle Harlan race all these races. And then they're like, Uncle Harlan, we like that one. And Uncle Harlan or somebody bought the Bass Brothers an old JAP Speedway bike. And they shared it in 1968. They shared it and they're just learning how to ride Speedway, the Bass Brothers. And Steve went ahead and progressed a little faster than Mike. Mike was a little bit like slower, I guess. But I think Steve's like a year or two older than Mike, so maybe he got some of his older brother genes. And they actually had team racing at the Whiteman Stadium. They had two teams. They had the Red Devils and they had what's the other team? The Tigers. They had the Red Devils and the Tigers. And the Red Devils, Steve Bass made that team the first year. So Steve Bass was an early bloomer and an amazing rider his whole life, really. Steve never got bad. He was like awesome the whole time. But the Red Devils consisted of Sonny Nutter, Sliding Sonny Nutter, Bruce Hazelrod, Steve Bass, and there's a few other guys that we don't really know who they are. I mean, they're like, nobody knows those guys, so we won't talk about them. And the Tigers had two guys that we kind of remember, Rick Woods, Rocket Rick Woods, and they had Stu Morley, and a few other guys we don't know about. And they had early day team racing. They raced against each other, and they brought team racing to America. And like Steve Evans does today, they do team racing. It's really fun. So if you're a speeder rider, you want to ride in the team racing. You learn a lot, and you have a partnership, and you win and lose as a team. So in Speedway, you don't have a lot of teams, you know, but I mean, it's an individual sport. So the team racing in England and in America is pretty cool because you can actually belong to a team and win and hopefully not lose as a team. I won once as a team, and that was one of the rich experiences. And my last live stream, I talked about that. That was the most rewarding experience I had, was to help my team win a championship. So team racing is really cool. And they had early day team racing back at Whiteman Stadium, the Red Devils and the Tigers. And so that was pretty cool. Dude Criswell brought all that back. So that happened. And Speedway had a few other guys that time. They had actually a promoter named Wes Cooley. He promoted a speedway track called the El Toro Speedway back in Orange County, California. Do you know Orange County, California? I do. You do. I was born in Orange County, California. I know that place. But I didn't know anything about the El Toro Speedway. They actually did that for a little while. The promoter, Wes, he gave the riders like $10 each. All the riders got show-up money, $10, and no money for racing. So when the racers came once or twice, they won the main event, and then Wes said, okay, goodbye. And the guy's like, you know, probably the Bass Brothers or Woods or something. They're like, where's our winning money? And they said, you got $10 and goodbye. And so the riders got mad, you know, $10 for everybody and then no winning money. So the rider said, phooey on you, like, we're not going to ride at the El Toro Speedway anymore because it costs money to race, right? You got tires, you got the race fuel, you got the gasoline to get to the track, the wear and tear on your van. You have all this expenses, and this West only paid $10, and it ended real fast. No riders are like, ooh, no more El Toro Speedway. So that was kind of a beginning and end real fast. The $10 show-up money did not work at the El Toro Speedway. So, and then you have Saugus Raceway. I don't even know where Saugus is. It's like Pacoima, probably neighbors of Pacoima, out in the middle of nowhere. And that was a track that nobody even went to. I don't even know where the heck, they used to have a logo in Bakersfield that said, where the hell is Bakersfield? You remember that? Remember that sign that where the hell is Bakersfield? I say, where the hell is Saugus in Pacoima? I don't know. I have no idea. And nobody else knew where the Saugus Raceway was. And the Speedway collapsed. Nobody went there. Nobody knew about it. So the Saugus Speedway lasted pretty much like El Toro. It kind of collapsed on its face. And mentioned, they saw all these events going on, and they said, Jack Milne was there too. And they saw the weaknesses and the bad parts about the Speedway in the early days. And they just decided they were going to go ahead and improve on that. And they went ahead and secured rights at the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds. Do you know the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds? I think you do. And Harry Oxley and Jack Milne went ahead and secured the rights. They went ahead and started the Speedway. We're not going to talk too much about that. But in 1969, a year later, they started the Costa Mesa Speedway, and it became a big hit. You know, the Speedway at that time, actually it was good timing, and I try not to talk about it too much, but they had like the surfboard craze, a lot of different crazes, the motorcycle craze, on any Sunday movie came out a couple years later, that helped out. They had all these different crazes and all these different things happening, surfing craze, and the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds being next to the beach attracted all these surfers and all these people. You know, it just became really big. So the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds also got up and close and personal. Remember we talked about that. The mud was flying in your face, the dirt was flying in your drinks, and the smell of the beautiful castor oil was in your nose. I like that one. And so Costa Mesa Fairgrounds was pretty cool. They had fights on the stands. People were fighting. They had the hot chicks walking around. I was a little young for the hot chicks. I was just a little kid. But it was just amazing. They had speedway races, fights. They had the smell of the oil, the castor oil. They had all this stuff going on. And they had the mud flying. We used to go down there. Did you do that when you were kids? Like put those tear-offs around your face and then the mud flying in your face, and they're like, oh, 40, you got mud in our face. Because back then they used to put a lot of mud on the track, and it was cool. Early days of Costa Mesa. So Costa Mesa took all the things that were wrong at the White Man and the Trojan Speedway, and they perfected it and made it really, really cool. So that's it. We're going to stop there. We're not going to go anymore about the Costa Mesa, but we know that Costa Mesa has been running over 50 years, and it's the granddaddy of all speedway tracks, and Costa Mesa is one of the most amazing tracks. And so anyways, that's what we have there. And we're going to go ahead and talk about that American Speedway is alive and well today. We have that big race going on the 12th, this Saturday night at Paris Speedway. Steve Evans is promoting that track, and it's really cool. We have a chance for 2 riders to advance to the May 2021 runoff of 64 riders, and the top 4 of those riders are going to advance automatically to race in the 2022 GP Series. They're going to have an automatic seat for that, and the 4 riders who have that seat have a chance to do what? Win the World Championship. And that's what we want to do. We want riders from the U.S. to progress and win that the World Championship. Forget the United States. The World Championship. That's what we like. And we talked about the rise of early day speedway, from the Jack Milne to the Cordy Milne to the Lemmy Lamarocks to the Sprouts Elder. All these guys, Ernie Rocio. We just had a slug of early day greats. We don't want to forget you. They did really great. They're amazing early founders of the American Speedway. And we have a crop of riders in the 60s that came up after the early 30 riders. They were fading out at this time. We had a new crop of riders. We have Sliding Sonny Nutter, Sammy Tanner, the Rocket Rick Woods. We have the Bass brothers, Mike and Steve Bass. We already know who those guys are. I did a vlog on them last week, and it's just amazing. Those guys are crazy good. And we had Bruce Hazaroff, Big Mike Conley. You know, Mike Bass, he was tied with Mike Conley back in like 1973 for the United States Championship. And they had a runoff. It was Big Mike Conley versus Big Mike Bass. I don't know if they call him Big. The machine Mike Bass. The fast Mike Bass. I think that's the better word. And they had a runoff it was Mike Conley and Mike Bass for the national championship. How exciting is that? I think it's one of the only times that I know of that they had a runoff for #1. And who won that race? Mike Bass beat Mike Conley out. And I met Mike Conley back when I was a little kid. He wore those red leathers and a little bit of gray in his leathers. #89, Mike Conley. He was like 6'4". He was a big dude, and he was nice. He signed my autograph. I remember that. Thank you so much, Mike Conley, for that autograph. So we had Mike Conley. I don't talk about Mike Conley very much, and he was a great rider. So we had him. We had Sweet Savage, and Sweet got those track records. He was a great rider. And we had Don Holly, and let's see, who else did we have? We had Harlan Bass. Uncle Harlan Bass was there, and Stu Morley. So we had a whole crop of early day riders. There was more coming too. After Costa Mesa came up, there was Bill Cody, and all these guys came up. But we're talking about the ones that race at Trojan Speedway and the Whiteman Speedway. And this is the riders we're talking about right now. And then Costa Mesa created a whole new crop. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future live stream. But today we're talking about the Trojan and Whiteman and the early day Speedway. So now we have a crop of riders racing, like I mentioned, this Saturday, the 12th of December. And you're going to be the next group of champions and riders. America has a rich history of Speedway riders and champions. So we're expecting the American riders to do well. We are America, and we produce good Speedway riders, the best in the world. So we expect the best. Forget about your age, forget about everything. You are American, and you're going to go all the way. Just like Jack Milne, just like the rest of the early day Speedway stars did. And we had Bruce Penhall back in 1981 and did that. And then we had a whole bunch of riders in America, Sutton Sandler, Malenko, Billy Hamill, Greg Hancock. We had all these great Speedway riders also. And we need to carry that tradition. Greg retired, so we need to carry that tradition today. So anyways, we're going to do that one. And we're going to start this Saturday night at Lake Paris Speedway, promoted by the great Steve Evans. So get there on time. First race is at 7, and let's go out and kick some butt. All right. So anyway, we want to thank you so much for watching this live stream. There is no time limit. Hopefully you stayed with us to the end. We had a great show today, and it was a lot of work preparing for it, but we had a great time. And just go ahead and remember that, we just don't have this time limit. We're going to do more. I think we're like the only live stream show on the internet that talks like this. We want to do some interviews too. Everyone does interviews. We're going to be a little bit weird, a little bit different, and talk a little bit about Speedway and do interviews. We got lots of interviews to do, and we're going to do more Speedway. If you want to go ahead and check out the YouTube channel, the Brian B YouTube channel, I have a lot of pretty cool early day Speedway videos. And the riders today, I have a lot of videos of the current riders, early day riders, all the riders of Speedway, European riders, European world champions, American world champions, everything. So we appreciate that. If you can subscribe, that would be great. Support the channel. And thank you so much for joining. And thank you so much for being at the Beehive today. You are the bees. Thank you, bees, for joining us and having a good time. I hope I didn't bore you. I hope I didn't put you to sleep. And if I did, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. You guys are great, wonderful. I love all of you. And, I know most of you guys from Speedway, and I really appreciate your support for Speedway. And we all love Speedway, and we all want it to grow. And we want more American riders racing for world championships in the future. Greg Hancock, like I say, retired, and we have a new crop of young riders coming up. So we want to see them do well, and we want to wish them good luck, health, and success. So we want to really wish everyone well this Saturday night. And thank you so much for watching the show today. And we hope you enjoyed it. And if not, I'll give you your money back. Oh, no, you didn't pay for the show, so I guess I can't do that. So thank you so much. And please like, share, subscribe, and always ring that bell. Thank you so much. I love you.